Welcome to Stop the Fight, and today we are recapping this action-packed triple-header weekend. Let's go!
Don't brag about taking my side piece! Don't brag about taking my side piece, though!
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy, just...
Let's get right into it. First, we're going to talk about the Joshua Buatsi victory over Ricards Bolotniks. Now, we were wrong here. Let's call him Buatsi. I thought Buatsi would get him out in under 6.5 rounds. That killed my parlay. That kind of killed my day. But it's okay because the fight was pretty good. We learned a thing or two about both these guys. And about Buatsi, we were there to see Buatsi. Did he pass the test? Well, yes and no. In some ways he did. In some ways, of course, we saw things in Buatsi which I think are going to hurt him. And I think this is now 2 fights in a row, right? That he's looked... No, it's not 2 fights in a row because he looked okay against Santos. But Kalik or Salik, however you want to say, he did not look so great against in winning in 7 rounds. But let's talk about this fight. So, Bolotniks, okay, there are points where Buatsi, he seems to get lulled in his own attack. You'll notice him, he'll throw something against Bolotnik, and then he'll kind of just stop there. And at numerous points, Bolotniks was able to counter him. And it wasn't, I wouldn't even call it a counter. He just threw after Buatsi was done throwing because Buatsi stayed. And I think that, sometimes you hear it, they're admiring their own work. I'm not saying Buatsi was necessarily admiring his own work, but he would stop moving at points. He would have his offensive moments and stop, allowing for Bolotniks to come back with 2, 3, 4 punches. And Bolotniks has that typical Eastern European, you start your combination from the body, move up to the head. And there were numerous times where Buatsi would throw 3 punches, 2 punches, 1 punch, whatever it is, stop, and then Bolotniks would then throw 4 or 5 punch combinations, starting with 2 to the body and then working its way up. And, at points, Buatsi looked like he was stunned by Bolotniks in the fight. He eventually did get Bolotniks out of there, and, I thought the fight actually could have been stopped when Bolotniks was down. I think it was in the 6th round or 5th round. 6th, I think it was, yeah, 6th round. When Bolotniks was down in the 6th round and then was getting beat on for the next 20 seconds or so, I thought the ref was actually going to stop it. He didn't, and in a way that was a good thing because Bolotniks did come back. I thought Buatsi did punch himself out a little bit. Bolotniks did come back and did have a lot of success in round 7, 8, 9, 10. I actually think the fight there was a point, it was kind of close. I was getting worried. I thought Bolotniks, after Joshua punched himself out a little bit, Buatsi punched himself out a little bit in the 6th round. I thought Bolotniks may actually stop the young man. Well, I think he didn't, and eventually that right hand put an end to Bolotniks in the 11th. But it looked like Bolotniks was just dead tired as well. So what can we say about Buatsi here? Well, I think afterwards, Eddie Hearn was saying Bivol is next, and Bivol is a beatable, I think, a beatable opponent for Buatsi. But only if he learns how to move. If he does this pylon type of this pylon type of stuff where he just stands after his offense against Bivol's just going to move around him, tagging him. Just being long, and Buatsi has these long arms. That's not going to be enough because Bivol can move in. Buatsi didn't show me much speed on his feet, tell you the truth. Bolotniks looked like he was equally as athletic, should I say. So, I don't know. I know they're calling for Bivol, but this is a slight, aside I'm going to mention here. Vergil Hunter has really not... I know fighters like him, and I know he's kind of touted as his grandmaster, but outside of Ward, what has Vergil Hunter really accomplished with his fighters? Was Amir Khan any better? Was El Perro Angulo really any better? I remember him saying, throw those hands, son. And it's one of those things where it's like, Angulo was a shot fighter. I don't know with some of these... I don't know what these fighters are getting from Vergil Hunter. I really haven't noticed much improvement. They seem more cerebral and maybe a mental thing. You know, some fighters do need that. But in terms of the boxing, outside of Andre Ward, what has Vergil Hunter really done? Who's the great guy that he's kind of turned around? You know, for all the flag that Teddy Atlas gets, Timothy Bradley, that fireman speech, you know, lights a fire under his ass. I think with that, you see the hooks shorten up. You certainly saw it with Povetkin. He was able to shorten his hooks. But what has Vergil Hunter done to deal with the guys that he's gotten? I don't know. It seems like it's a lot of talk, a lot of this, like, I want to call it boxing mysticism going on with Vergil Hunter. You know, it's like everyone is a fortune teller, you know, some kind of metaphysical, esoteric things going on with the boxing, but not much going on with the hands. There's a lot, you know. I mean, I'm not saying Vergil Hunter is a subpar trainer. I'm not, but what I'm saying is sometimes, you know, like should Buatsi have been struggling this much with Bolotniks? Is what I'm saying, and I think that's what we should all ask. Why was there points Buatsi not? Why was he only throwing 1 or 2 punches the entire round? How many times did Buatsi need to do more? Or certainly not stand there. I mean, like, come on, guys. There are points he's just standing there. So, again, he looked good. He looked pretty good. But we have to be critical of guys who are 15-0 with 13 knockouts, guys who are fighting Bivolniks, guys who, you know, maybe potentially Canelo opponents at light heavyweight if he chooses to move up. So we kind of have to ask these questions of them. You know, Vergil Ortiz looked phenomenal. We'll talk about him in a second. And Vergil's kind of defensive lapses are a little bit more understandable at the higher level than Buatsi's here. Buatsi you can't stop in the ring like that. You just can't. You can't throw your shots and then stop. Also, I feel Buatsi could fight going back, but at points didn't quite see it. I don't know whether there was a stamina issue. It looked like Buatsi was tired at points in this fight. So again, we're gonna have to look and kind of I'm actually gonna watch this fight again, because if I'm not mistaken, you saw Buatsi stay on the inside much more often than he should have also. Now, this could be the fact that he just kind of stopped, and when you stop moving, the other opponent's going to move forward and bring you inside. Buatsi, with his reach, he has a long one, and a pretty good one, too, should always be on the outside. Vladimir Klitschko is what you want to aim for, you know, first and foremost. If you can do that, you're already at the world championship level. If you can develop a jab and a right hand like Klitschko, or if you're gifted with those type of things, you want to try and emulate that, because Vladimir Klitschko went a decade being undefeated. And that's that. So, but Bolotniks also, maybe I just underestimated Bolotniks. It absolutely could be. I absolutely could have underestimated that guy, but he's now 18-6-1 with 8 knockouts and 4 defeats coming by way of knockout. He did eventually lose this fight, but I think, you know, if I did underestimate him or what, he did kind of show pretty well. And at points, I thought he was on the verge of really hurting Buatsi. If he just had a little more oomph in his punches, I think this fight could have looked very, very, very differently. Now, speaking of Vergil Ortiz, let's just go straight to Vergil Ortiz's awesome fight victory over Kavaliauskas. Now, this is going to be like a stark contrast fight to the Rigondeaux fight that I watched right afterwards. So let's talk about this. As I said in the pre-fight, this is kind of like an A-level guy fighting a B-level guy with the same type. I'm not saying necessarily that Vergil Ortiz is A-level, but he kind of looks it, or he looks close to it. Fighting like a B-level guy in Kavaliauskas, and they kind of do the exact same thing as we saw in last week's fight with Galahad and Dickens. And when two fighters are similar type fighters and want to do the exact same thing, a similar style, the guy with the better attributes, who's a little bit quicker, a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, is going to beat the exact same version of himself that's a little bit weaker in those attributes, a little bit slower, a little bit smaller, a little bit with a little less power. And so, like I said, Kavaliauskas had his moments, especially in the second round. I think that should have been a knockdown. I think Vergil Ortiz went down for the first time in his career. Right? I think that's the first time in his career. I think he went down in that second round. I think he was hurt. I don't think he was hurt. He was most obviously hurt. Kavaliauskas caught him with some shots. And let me tell you about Kavaliauskas. He likes to fight. And that's an awesome thing. Now we saw it a second time. First against Crawford and now against Ortiz. He's a fighter. And so, again, these guys are just born. They love to slug it out. Whether they go down or they take you out. That's the way they want to do it. You know what I mean? And this is what it is with Kavaliauskas. He was there to rumble. Hell, he went down 5 times, I think. 5 times in this fight. And that is something. It truly is. And he kept getting up and kept coming forward until he was obviously eventually taken out. I thought the ref could have stopped it on the knockdown prior to the last one because he looked like he was spent. It was just too much. Vergil Ortiz was too strong. Let's talk about Vergil again. He's now 18-0, 18 knockouts. He's a 5'10", 23-year-old kid with very good offensive. Let's say great offensive abilities. Reminds me a little bit of Golovkin in that sense. Golovkin's a little bit more subtle on the defense, but I think Vergil Ortiz may be able to get there with time. He's young, 23 years old. Because one of the things with Golovkin, why I compare him to Golovkin, because he really does kind of remind me of him, is that they're both these very, very strong offensive fighters. I think Golovkin may have had a little bit more pop, and Vergil Ortiz maybe has a little bit more relative speed. But as I said, they're both these kind of just knockout punchers, knockout artists. I mean, once Kavaliauskas experienced his first knockdown, I knew this was going to be a big issue because Vergil Ortiz had recovered, and he wanted to kind of prove himself. The way these especially young guys, 23-year-old, you're undefeated. You know what I mean? You haven't faced defeat. No man beats you. And he kind of showed that he's really about that. He came out there in the third round and didn't miss a beat. I think those rounds 4 and 5 were kind of close. They were not. I think there was a knockdown in the 5th or 6th round, whatever. But they were all kind of close. But you kind of saw that Vergil Ortiz was able to slow down the pace and kind of give Kavaliauskas a different look, force him to box slightly differently because he was still dangerous early on. And I think this was a learning moment for Ortiz. When you have another puncher, another slugger, another fighter, like a fighter, you got to be careful because early on, everybody's dangerous. All punches are dangerous early on. It's late when power fades, but early on, and as Vergil Ortiz found out, you have to be sometimes a little bit more measured. And again, this is different than the Buatsi thing where Kavaliauskas is at least a challenger to the world level. I'm not calling himself a world level guy, but he's at least a challenger. He's almost there. He's close. He's already challenged once and, gave Crawford a little bit of something to think about, and now he's challenged a second time and gave Vergil Ortiz something to think about. This is not like Bolotniks, who's kind of come short. Yes, he has some recent good wins, but the expectations were different. I was expecting early on for this to be a competitive fight, and it was, and the longer it went, the more Vergil Ortiz was able to take over. Now, Vergil Ortiz's jab is very powerful. You see it that it's fast and it's powerful. You see that Kavaliauskas does not want to take this, and that's why I'm saying he reminds me a little bit of Golovkin. You can't take that jab for too long. It itself acts as kind of a power shot. You take 30, 40, 50 of them over the course of 4 or 5 rounds, 10 jabs around, it's going to start marking up and hurting you. And you start, once that jab starts hurting you, once that jab starts touching you, and he was able to land that jab quite consistently on Kavaliauskas. I think it really isn't, I'm telling you, Vergil Ortiz is, guys, I think he's the real deal here. Unquestionable. I think he's ready. He is absolutely 100% ready for the champs at 147. I think he even, this is maybe blasphemous, but I think he's ready for Crawford. I think he's absolutely ready for him. Now, of course, Crawford's not going to fight him. That's absolutely not happening because Crawford is not going to fight on the zone. But, I know they're saying Danny Garcia is moving up to 140, but if 154, sorry. But if Danny Garcia doesn't move up to 154, there's some fights for him here. I mean, if Mikey, I don't think this is a bad matchup for Mikey. I don't think, after fighting Spence, and after what we saw, what just a bigger, stronger guy can do, I think, I'm not exaggerating, I think Vergil Ortiz is at least as strong as Spence. At least as strong as Spence. So, I'm looking at 147. You got, obviously, Crawford, Spence, Porter, Garcia, Brook, Danny Garcia. Ugas was fighting, who's stepping in for Spence to fight Pacquiao next week. Abel Ramos, the Russian David Avanasian, Jamal James, Josecito Lopez, Jesse Vargas, Jerome Ennis. Ooh, but no, man, I don't know. I don't think Ennis has the pop. Sorry, I'm not. Ennis absolutely has the pop. I was thinking about someone else. My bad. Ennis absolutely has the pop. But these are interesting fights right here. Sorry, Ennis. I don't mean to badmouth you like that. Got you confused with the kid at 130 who we just saw a few weeks ago. Can't think of his name right now. Doesn't matter. So I think this is a perfect division for him. I think it's here for the taking. He's big enough to go all the way up to, I think, middleweight, and this is the real deal. He is the real deal over here. At 147, I'm now sure by watching against Kaliakis, watching the way he recovered, watching how he was able to change the pace of the fight in the mid rounds when it was obvious that you shouldn't just be engaging with Kaliakis. Not a good idea. And, he's showing some maturity. If he picks up a little more defensive subtlety, we're talking about a pound-for-pound fighter. Unquestionably a top pound-for-pound fighter. That's just the way that I saw it. And first of all, getting hurt against also Kaliakis is not a big deal. I think he also hurt Crawford, and he's just a strong guy. You can look at his physique. Now, obviously, physique is not the be-all and end-all in boxing, but this guy looked chiseled. Kaliakis did. He looked like, I don't know if you guys have seen that movie Prometheus, where with the aliens and stuff, and those guys have like ridiculously white marble abs. Well, this guy looked like a walking muscle, and he hit hard, and he hit. What's his name? Ortiz. But like I said, Ortiz showed us a lot, I think, in this fight. And a lot of good. To make those adjustments, to persevere, to change tempos in the fight, to adjust defensively and offensively. I mean, we're talking, he started throwing his hooks differently. He started using the jab. I mean, like, I'm telling you guys, go watch this fight. It was a very good fight. I don't say very good. It was a good fight. And you see a lot of high-level stuff. You see what happens when you have power jabs, the difference between a jab and a power jab. Watch Vergil Ortiz, a little bit like Golovkin. You have power jabs. And so you have the whole game. And against a guy who challenges for the world level. So against a high-caliber opponent. So now, after going from an exciting fight, guys, I'm going to tell you about a horrendous fight. A just horrendous fight, but one that I think the judges got wrong and one that I think I predicted correctly. Whew. Let's talk about the Guillermo Rigondeaux versus John Casimero fight. A horrendous fight. An atrocious fight. A fight I will never watch again. Don't advise anyone watch it unless they want to see what, don't hit and don't get hit look like. It was I think this set a ConcuBox record, I was reading somewhere, for the lowest amount of punches landed in a fight at 90-something punches. I think both guys landed about like 45 shots or something like that. Rigondeaux, boy, he really knows how to stink up a joint, even in what I thought was a winning effort. Officially, he lost the fight by split decision. One judge had it for him, 115-113. And overruled by two other judges at 116-112 and 117-111. The scores can kind of be all over the place. I thought personally on my scorecard, and I was scoring this fight because when you watch a Rigondeaux fight, especially one where you think it's going to be a defensive thing, you really want to keep track of these rounds. I had it 116-112 for Rigondeaux. I thought that outside of the first round and maybe one or two other ones, every round was a swing round. And Rigondeaux, as a southpaw, did what I thought he was going to do. He's going to force Casimero to miss wildly. I thought, honestly, he would do a little bit more offensively. I mean, this was a paltry offensive effort by Rigondeaux. Ugh. Really quite unwatchable stuff, guys. Yeah, he still looked pretty fast at 40. I think he's actually older again. He still looked pretty fast. He was able to move well, but there was nothing offensively coming out at all. I mean, like I said, he landed 45 or 46 or something like that shots. And like, oof. I mean, that's averaging right around 4 a round. Think about that for a second. That's bad. I mean, that is nothing. And his shots were, I think, more visible than Casimero's. So when he would land, you would clearly see it. He did, yes, he did kind of run around, and boom, would nail you with that straight left. You know, or he's a southpaw, so from the southpaw spans his power shot. His jabs were more eye-popping, I thought, than Casimero's. Again, I'm not upset. I don't think this is a robbery. I think with each guy landing in the mid-40s, the first round being clearly Casimero's, but basically there was almost no clear round. Almost none afterwards. Because the entire time Casimero was going forward and missing, and Rigondeaux was on his bicycle. And I don't want to use the term running, but he was at points actually running from Casimero, really snoozing it out. I thought he landed the cleaner shots. If you did not watch it, and you do want to like bore yourself to tears, but at the same time, in some ways, kind of see some defensive mastery. I mean, to be able to do this, regardless whether you're running or not, requires a tremendous amount of skill. And you can see the kind of like overflowing magma of skill that is Rigondeaux's defensive work. You know, Casimero's a decent fighter. I don't think he beats, although, you know, Donaire's another year older. I don't know if he beats Donaire if the fight really does come off. I certainly don't think he beats Inoue. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think anyone beats Inoue at badminton weight, but Rigondeaux. You know, his feet are still there, but his offense seemed to go away. I don't know if he was conserving energy, or if he didn't like what he felt in the first round, because it did, like, he was hit when he went down, but it was really a slip. I think it could have been ruled a knockdown, but he was hit when he was down. Like, Casimero blatantly hit him when Rigondeaux was on the canvas in the first round. He kind of had he was on his knee, one hand touching the floor. Casimero threw like 4 or 5 shots at him. I mean, he could have gotten disqualified or a point taken off right there. I mean, this fight could have been over in the first round. Again, if you do want to watch a defensive master at work, you can see this. But he really was running at points, and in P4, like, their crowd was booing, and they knew that they were booing the right guy. They were booing Rigondeaux. There was no question as to who was thinking of the joint. It was Rigondeaux. But at the same time, like I keep saying, in a boxing ring, even if you try to run away, the other guy will eventually catch you. But over here, Rigondeaux's defensive game was so good that there was no chance, none whatsoever, that, what's his name? The Casimero could have caught him. That's how good he was. And he was missing by such wide margins that it was comical. I was laughing at one point. I really was. I meant no offense. No offense, but he really was. Do you remember the fight with Lemieux against Billy Joe Saunders? And Billy Joe makes Lemieux miss one really, like, wide overhand right. And he looks over to the audience, and because the shot is so wide, the entire event is comical. I think Rigondeaux did this like 10, 15 times in this fight. He made Casimero miss so wide that I was laughing at points in the fight. Now, again, I do not wish anyone rewatches this fight. Well, so I certainly am never going to watch this fight ever again in my life. And I wouldn't suggest any of you guys watch it unless it's for the sick curiosity of what a fight with only like 90-something punches landed can look like. What a fight with 4 punches landed a pop per round can look like. I don't think there was a single round where combined the guys landed more than 10 shots. There were points in the Vergil Ortiz fight where 10 shots were landed in the course of 30 seconds, let alone a round. So that's really all I have to say for Rigondeaux. The problem is I don't know how many promoters even wanna book him again. Who wants to watch him fight? And I love Rigondeaux. I'll watch him fight. But in terms of, you're a promoter, here's an old Rigondeaux who can really embarrass your fighter, make him look atrocious. Probably beats one of the champs. I mean, like I said, I thought he won this fight. Hell, I think if they had a rematch, the same thing would probably occur, or unless Rigondeaux slowed down a little bit, eventually you'd get caught. But you know, who's gonna fight Rigondeaux? He's not. He's gonna sit again until he's literally aged out of the sport. I just don't. I do not see who Rigondeaux fights, or who even wants to fight him. He's the absolute definition of super low reward, super high risk. It's about as bad as it can get. You know, in terms of risk-reward ratio. I can't think of a worse fighter to fight than him. And everyone's going to be bored, so everyone's going to believe that your fighter that's fighting Rigondeaux is partially responsible for this atrocious fight. That's it. So then I switched over to the... I won't switch over. I mean, like, I would have many fights on at the same time, but then I switched over to the ESPN card, and you had Andrew Maloney against Joshua Franco, third fight in their, I guess, trilogy. The first fight was a very competitive, close, unanimous decision loss by Maloney, or a victory by Joshua Franco. Then you had the accidental headbutt in the second fight, and in this fight, I think Franco sealed the deal. Won 116-112 on all three scorecards. It looked like he was just a little bit stronger than Maloney. That's really all it came down to. Joshua Franco was just a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit faster, a little bit better than Maloney, and that's what you kind of get, a close but competitive, a clear but competitive decision victory by Joshua Franco. I believe if they fight it 10 more times, you get the same kind of response. I think Franco is maturing better into his weight. You know, he's 25. And he's kind of figured Maloney out. So I think this is it for Maloney and Franco. Maloney's got to look at a different foe at 114. He's got to look at a different foe. And that's probably going to be it. Now, what else? What else are we going to talk about? Let's talk about the general. We had Gary Antonio Russell and Emmanuel Rodriguez. There was a nasty headbutt in the opening seconds of the fight. Split Emmanuel's face wide open, and that kind of ended it there. So here we are. You know, that I wonder if that fight happens again. Do they do an immediate rematch? I don't know. We'll see. You know, sometimes with these things in boxing, it's kind of like the Joshua Fury fight. Does that fight happen again? I don't know. Does that fight need to happen again? I don't think so. I mean, the Joshua Fury fight, I think, will probably need to happen, especially if Fury gets past Wilder. So yeah, guys. Again, awesome weekend, except for the Rigondeaux fight. Although it's interesting just from a defensive perspective. Obviously, you know, given my long parlay was ruined at like 4 p.m. or whatever it was, 5 p.m. Eastern. I was just watching as just a fan with nothing at stake going forward. I did think Rigondeaux won the fight. If you haven't seen that, score it for yourself. It seems like any score in this fight was reasonable. You know, 114 was reasonable. 119, 109 is reasonable, depending on what you like and what you didn't like. Either way. So, yeah, like I said, congratulations to Vergil Ortiz, who convinced me outright. I think that's the future world champion. If he adds just a little bit more subtlety to his defensive game. We're talking about a pound-for-pound fighter. Like I said, I see shades of Golovkin in him. Joshua Buatsi, he fought well. But we see enough holes where he needs to make more improvement before he fights, I think, a world champion. There needs to be some more improvements. I mean, as long as he's happy with Vergil Hunter, and I have nothing to say about that. And I wish them a fruitful partnership going forward. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for me. I'll see you guys on a Thursday. It's over.
I'm gonna go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
And she's strong, man, good boy, just